My name's Adrian Cole, and this is the story of how everything I thought I knew about friendship, love, and myself got turned completely upside down. It's about late-night conversations that meant more than I admitted, touches that lingered too long to be casual, and the terrifying beauty of finally seeing someone who'd been right in front of me all along. They say the best love stories start with friendship. What they don't tell you is how absolutely devastating it feels when you realize you've crossed that invisible line and there's no going back. When every smile becomes a question, every goodbye feels like losing something precious. And the person you've trusted with everything suddenly holds your entire heart in their hands. This is my story. This is our story. And it surprised me in ways I never saw coming. The Seattle rain had a particular smell, that October wet asphalt mixed with fallen leaves and that crisp bite of approaching winter. I'd always loved autumn in the city. The way the Space Needle disappeared into low clouds, how the coffee shops filled with people seeking warmth and community. But that Thursday evening, I barely noticed any of it as I drove to Marcus's apartment in Capitol Hill, my mind replaying our phone conversation from earlier. "Just come over," he'd said, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that always made me feel like coming home. "I'm making that carbonara you pretend not to love. And I downloaded that documentary about brutalist architecture you've been obsessing over." That was Marcus remembering the small things, the details I mentioned once in passing. We'd been best friends since sophomore year of college. Bonding over a shared hatred of our macroeconomics professor and a mutual love of obscure indie films. 5 years later, he knew me better than anyone. Sometimes better than I knew myself. I parked outside his building, a converted warehouse with exposed brick and floor tuzeling. Windows that he'd somehow afforded through a combination of rent control, luck, and his graphic design freelance work. The rain had intensified, drumming against my windshield in a steady rhythm that matched my suddenly racing heartbeat. Something felt different tonight. I couldn't explain it, couldn't name the strange electricity humming beneath my skin. Maybe it was the week I'd had. My ex-boyfriend Derek had texted out of nowhere, asking to catch up, stirring up memories I'd thought I'd buried. Maybe it was exhaustion from the project deadline at the architecture firm where I worked. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Something I'd been carefully not examining for longer than I cared to admit. Marcus buzzed me in, and I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, my shoes leaving wet prints on the concrete steps. His door was already open when I reached the landing, warm lights spilling into the hallway, along with the scent of garlic and pancetta. "You're late," Marcus called from the kitchen, not turning around. He was wearing dark jeans and a faded band t-shirt from a concert we'd gone to 2 years ago. His dark hair slightly longer than usual, curling at the nape of his neck. "I was beginning to think you'd drowned in traffic." "Seattle drivers forget how to function the moment it rains," I said, shrugging off my jacket and hanging it on the hook by the door, my designated hook. I realized the one he'd installed last year and never let anyone else use. "You'd think we'd be used to it by now." "You'd think," Marcus agreed, finally glancing over his shoulder with that crooked smile that had probably broken more hearts than he realized. His eyes warm brown with flecks of gold I could only see in good light, assessed me with the kind of attention that always made me feel simultaneously seen and exposed. "Rough day?" "Rough week," I admitted, moving into the open-plan kitchen to lean against the counter beside him. This was our routine, me keeping him company while he cooked, talking about everything and nothing. Derek texted. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, his hands pausing in their task of grating Parmesan. What did that asshole want? To apologize, apparently. Said he's been doing a lot of therapy and wants to make amends for how he treated me. That's rich. Marcus's voice carried an edge I didn't often hear. After he told you that you were too emotionally unavailable and then proceeded to cheat on you with his personal trainer? I couldn't help but smile at the indignation in his tone. Marcus had never liked Derek, though he'd been supportive enough when we were dating. After the breakup 8 months ago, all pretense of politeness had evaporated. I didn't respond. There's nothing to say good. Marcus returned to his cooking, his shoulders relaxing. You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are, Aid. Someone who doesn't make you question yourself. The nickname Aid sent a familiar warmth through my chest. He was the only person who called me that. Had been since the night we'd stayed up until 4 a.m. during finals week, delirious with caffeine and exhaustion. And he'd declared Adrian was too formal for someone he'd seen cry over a documentary about penguins. I watched him work. The practiced efficiency of his movements as he stirred the pasta. Tasted the sauce, adjusted the seasoning. There was something meditative about Marcus in the kitchen, centeredness that contrasted with the creative chaos of the rest of his life. He approached cooking the way I approached architectural design, with attention to detail, respect for the process, love for the craft. "Let me something good," I said, needing to shift away from thoughts of Derek. "How's the rebrand project going?" Marcus's face lit up, and he launched into an explanation of his latest freelance contract. A full visual identity redesign for a local nonprofit. I loved watching him talk about his work, the way his hands moved to illustrate points, the passion that animated every word. He'd always been expressive, wearing his emotions openly in a way I'd never quite managed. We ate at his small dining table by the window, rain streaking the glass, and the city lights blurring into abstract art beyond. The carbonara was perfect, as always, and I told him so. "You say that every time," Marcus said. But he was pleased, because it's true every time. The documentary played on his laptop, propped between us, but I found myself watching Marcus more than the screen. I noticed things I'd seen 1,000 times before, but somehow differently. The way he absently tucked his hair behind his ear. The laugh lines that appeared when he smiled. The elegant length of his fingers as he reached for his wine glass. When had his presence started feeling like this? Like gravity. Like inevitability. Like something essential I couldn't imagine living without. "You're quiet tonight," Marcus observed, pausing the video during a transition scene. "And you're not watching. You've been waiting for this documentary for weeks." "Just thinking," I said about Derek. No, it was the truth. Derek felt like a lifetime ago, a mistake I'd made while trying to convince myself I could fall in love with someone safe, someone who didn't threaten the careful balance of my life. About us, actually. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Surprise, maybe. Or was it hope? It vanished so quickly, I couldn't be sure. What about us? This was the moment. I could feel it. The fork in the road, the decision point. I could deflect, make a joke, retreat back to the safety of what we'd always been. Or I could step forward into the unknown, into the terrifying possibility that had been building in my chest for months. Maybe years. We're good at this, I said carefully. Gesturing between us, around us, at the entire comfortable intimacy of the evening. Better than I've been with anyone I've actually dated. "We've had practice," Marcus said, his voice careful now too, matching my energy. 5 years of it, do you ever think about? I trailed off, courage failing. About what? Marcus set down his wine glass, giving me his full attention in that focused way of his that always made me feel like the only person in the world. "Why we work so well," I finished. The coward's version of what I'd meant to say. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching my face for something I wasn't sure I was ready to show him. The rain intensified outside, and somewhere in the building, someone was playing jazz piano, the muted notes drifting through the walls. "I think," Marcus said slowly, "that we work because we see each other. Really see each other without the performance we put on for everyone else. You know the parts of me I don't show anyone, the anxiety. It's the perfectionism, the fear that I'm not actually talented enough to make it as a designer. And I know your parts too. How you use architecture as a shield. How you're terrified of being vulnerable. How you push people away before they can disappoint you." My breath caught. It was the most honest thing either of us had said in years, maybe ever. "That's pretty heavy for a Thursday night," you asked. But Marcus was smiling slightly. That gentle, knowing smile that said he understood I was deflecting because the truth was too big. "Too real. I admitted. I just didn't expect such a good answer. I'm full of surprises." He had no idea how true that was becoming. Because sitting there, in the warm light of his apartment, with the rain creating a cocoon around us, I was beginning to realize that the surprise wasn't Marcus at all. It was me. It was this feeling blooming in my chest. This recognition that what I'd been calling friendship had roots that grew much deeper. Tangled around my heart in ways I'd refused to acknowledge, I was falling in love with my best friend. Or maybe I'd been in love with him all along and was only now letting myself see it. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like finally understanding the punchline to a joke the universe had been telling for 5 years. "You okay?" Marcus asked, reaching across the table to touch my hand, a casual gesture we'd shared hundreds of times. But tonight I felt it everywhere, the warmth of his skin, the slight calluses on his fingertips from drawing, the gentleness of the contact. "Yeah," I said, and meant it. "I think I'm finally figuring some things out. Good things." I looked at him really, looked at him and saw the question beneath the question, the vulnerability he was trying to hide. And I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in this realization. If maybe Marcus had been waiting, hoping, holding space for me to catch up to what he'd already known. "Potentially life-changing things," I said softly. The air between us shifted, charged with possibility and the weight of unspoken words. Marcus's hand was still on mine, and neither of us pulled away. The documentary sat forgotten on the laptop. The rain continued its percussion against the windows. And somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, I understood that nothing would ever be the same again. And for the first time in my carefully controlled life, I was okay with that. The next morning, I woke up on Marcus's couch, disoriented and fully clothed except for my shoes, which someone Marcus had carefully placed beside the coffee table. Sunlight streamed through the windows, that particular brilliant October light that follows rain, making everything sharp and new. I checked my phone, 8:45 a.m. And 3 texts from Marcus. "Didn't want to wake you. You fell asleep during the documentary. Shocking, I know. Made coffee before I left for my client meeting. Help yourself to breakfast. Door locks automatically. Also, you drool when you sleep. It's disgustingly endearing. Let's talk soon." About the potentially life-changing things. My stomach flipped at the last message. So it hadn't been a dream, that moment of almost confession. The recognition that our friendship had shifted into something else. Something that terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. I poured coffee from the French press Marcus had left warming on the electric burner, and stood at his window looking out over Capitol Hill. The neighborhood was coming alive, runners on the sidewalk. The coffee shop on the corner already packed. A street musician setting up his guitar case for donations. I'd always loved this view, the way Marcus's apartment felt both part of the city and separate from it. A haven carved out of urban chaos. My phone buzzed, my sister Rachel, calling on FaceTime. I almost declined, but Rachel had a sixth sense for when I was avoiding something important. "Morning, stranger," she said when I answered, her face filling the screen. She was in her scrubs, probably on a break between surgeries at the hospital. "You look confused." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I said automatically. "Adrian Cole, I've known you for 28 years. You have your existential crisis face on? What happened?" I sank onto Marcus's couch, suddenly needing to tell someone. And if anyone could understand, it was Rachel. She'd been there through every major life event, every relationship disaster, every moment of self-discovery. She'd been the first person I'd come out to when I was 16. And she'd responded by taking me to Pride and buying me a rainbow flag that I still had in my apartment. "I think I'm in love with Marcus," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Rachel's eyes widened, and then she started laughing, not mockingly, but with genuine delight. "Oh my God, finally." "Finally? What do you mean, finally?" "Adrian, literally everyone who's ever met you two together knows you're in love with each other. The only people who didn't know were you and Marcus." "Well, maybe Marcus knew. He's more emotionally intelligent than you." I felt heat rush to my face. "We're best friends. You're best friends who look at each other like you hung the moon, who have keys to each other's apartments, who spend every weekend together, who know each other's coffee orders and favorite books and childhood traumas. Best friends is just the label you've been hiding behind because you're terrified of being vulnerable." She wasn't wrong. Rachel was rarely wrong when it came to reading me. "When did you realize?" "Probably before you did. Remember that summer after you graduated, when Marcus went to that design conference in Barcelona for 2 weeks? You were absolutely miserable. You called me every day, and all you could talk about was how much you missed him, how the city felt wrong without him. That's when I knew. That was 4 years ago, I said weakly. Like I said, finally. Rachel's expression softened. How are you feeling about it? Terrified. What if I'm wrong? What if this ruins everything? Marcus is the best thing in my life, Ratch. I can't lose him. But what if you're right? Rachel countered. What if he feels the same way? And you could have this beautiful relationship with someone who already knows and loves all of you. Doesn't that possibility outweigh the fear? I thought about Marcus's hand on mine the night before. The way he'd looked at me with those searching eyes, the text about talking soon. He said something last night about seeing each other. How we know the parts we don't show anyone else. That's not how straight men talk about their platonic friendships, Adrian. I'm not straight, you know what I mean? Rachel checked her watch. I have to get back to surgery, but listen to me. Life's too short to not tell the people we love that we love them. And if anyone deserves happiness, it's you. Both of you. Don't let fear keep you from something that could be extraordinary. After we hung up, I sat for a long time in the silence of Marcus's apartment, surrounded by the evidence of his life, the sketches pinned to his inspiration board, the succulents he somehow kept alive despite his chaotic schedule, the framed photograph of the two of us at a friend's wedding. Laughing at something I couldn't remember but feeling clearly visible on both our faces, Rachel was right. I'd been hiding behind friendship because it was safe, because it couldn't hurt me the way romantic relationships had. But in protecting myself, I'd been dishonest about what Marcus meant to me. What he'd always meant to me? My phone buzzed with a new text. Client meeting ended early. Want to grab lunch? I responded before I could overthink it. Yes, we should talk. The Italian place in Pike Place? Perfect. See you at noon. Pike Place Market was crowded with tourists and locals alike. The air filled with the calls of fishmongers and the scent of fresh flowers and coffee. I arrived at the restaurant first, nervous energy making me 10 minutes early, and secured a table by the window overlooking the water. Marcus arrived exactly at noon, and my breath caught seeing him walk through the door. How had I never noticed the way he moved, that easy confidence tempered with approachability? How had I never let myself fully appreciate the architecture of his face, the way his smile transformed his entire presence? Hey, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. He looked nervous, too, I realized, a certain tension in his shoulders that I recognized from important client presentations. So, potentially life-changing things? Server appeared, saving me from having to respond immediately. We ordered absently the same dishes we always got here, comfortable in our patterns even as everything else shifted. I talked to my sister this morning. I started once we were alone again. She said something that I can't stop thinking about. What did Rachel say? That everyone can see how we feel about each other except us. That we've been hiding behind friendship because it's safer than admitting we want more. I forced myself to meet his eyes. Was she right, Marcus? Do you? Do you want more? The question hung between us, enormous and terrifying and absolutely necessary. Marcus's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his water glass, took a sip, set it down carefully. I've been in love with you since the night we stayed up talking about our dreams during senior year, he said quietly, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the confession. You told me you wanted to design buildings that made people feel less alone, spaces that fostered community and connection. And I realized you did that for me, made me feel less alone, gave me a space where I could be completely myself. I've been in love with you for almost 4 years, Adrian. I just didn't think you'd ever see me that way. The world seemed to contract and expand simultaneously, every sound in the restaurant fading to white noise. For years. He'd carried this for 4 years while I'd dated Derek. While I'd complained about failed relationships, while I'd been blind to what was right in front of me. I'm so sorry, I said, my voice cracking. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. To see you. To see us? You see it now? Hope and vulnerability warred in Marcus's expression. I see it now, I confirmed. And I'm terrified, Marcus. Because you're right, do know the parts of me I hide from everyone else. You know, I'm emotionally guarded and terrible at vulnerability, and that I use work as an excuse to avoid dealing with feelings. You know I can be distant, and that I have a habit of running when things get too real. I know all of that, Marcus agreed. And I love you anyway. All of you, not despite those things, but including them. You're also brilliant and thoughtful and deeply kind when you let yourself be. You're loyal and passionate about what you believe in, and you make me laugh like no one else. You see beauty in structures and systems, and you taught me to see it too. Tears burned behind my eyes, an unfamiliar sensation. I wasn't someone who cried icily, but something about Marcus's words. The naked honesty of them broke through my defenses. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. How to be in love with my best friend. How to risk everything we have for something that might not work, or might be extraordinary, Marcus said, echoing Rachel's words. Look, I'm scared too. Terrified, actually. What if we try this and it ruins our friendship? What if we're better as what we've been than what we could be? But here's what I know. I've spent 4 years loving you and pretending I didn't, and I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of watching you date people who don't deserve you and knowing I could love you better if you'd let me. I'm tired of our Sunday morning coffee runs feeling like dates that can never be acknowledged as dates. They did feel like dates, I said, a watery laugh escaping. God, we've been basically dating for years without calling it that, haven't we? Pretty much. Marcus's smile was tentative, hopeful. So maybe this isn't as big a leap as it feels like. Maybe we've been building toward this all along. Our food arrived, but neither of us moved to eat. The moment felt too important, too fragile to interrupt with something as mundane as lunch. If we do this, I said carefully, I need you to be patient with me. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to get scared and want to retreat. I'm going to be bad at this in the beginning, I know, Marcus said. And I need you to communicate with me when you're scared instead of running. I need you to let me in, even when it feels safer to shut down. I need you to trust that I'm not going anywhere, even when you're convinced you're going to disappoint me. I can try, I said. I want to try. For you. For us? Is that a yes? Marcus asked, and I could hear his heart in the question. Are you saying you want to do this? Actually be together, not just as best friends, but as more. I thought about all the moments that had led us here, 5 years of friendship, late-night conversations and shared dreams, of being there for each other through every triumph and disaster. I thought about how Marcus knew my coffee order and my childhood fears, and the exact words to say when I was spiraling. I thought about how his presence felt like home, how his smile made something in my chest expand and soften, and I thought about Rachel's words, life's too short not to tell the people we love that we love them, I said. The word both surrender and declaration. I want this. I want you. I want us to try. The smile that broke across Marcus's face was pure sunshine, radiant and transformative. He reached across the table, and I met him halfway. Our fingers interlacing in a gesture we'd shared hundreds of times before, but which felt entirely new in this context. So we're doing this, he said. We're doing this, I confirmed. And just like that, everything changed. And just like that, everything stayed exactly the same, because loving Marcus, being loved by him, felt as natural as breathing. As inevitable as sunrise, we ate our lunch, talking about next steps, about telling friends, about how to navigate this transition, but mostly we just looked at each other with new eyes, seeing the relationship we'd been building all along and finally calling it what it was. Love. It had always been love. The first week of being together, if idyllically, romantically together, was strange and wonderful, and occasionally terrifying in ways I hadn't anticipated. We moved slowly, carefully, both of us aware that we were building something on a foundation that mattered too much to rush. Our first official date was dinner at a quiet restaurant in Fremont. The kind of place we'd been to a dozen times before, but which felt entirely different when Marcus pulled out my chair and the host said, "Enjoy your evening." Gentleman, with a knowing smile that suggested our relationship status was obvious to everyone but us. This is weird, right? Marcus said after we'd ordered, his hand finding mine across the table in a gesture that was becoming natural, essential. We've had dinner together 1,000 times, but this feels different. Because it is different, I said. Before, I was pretending these weren't dates. Now I get to acknowledge that sitting across from you is my favorite part of any day. Marcus's expression softened, and I was learning to recognize that particular look, the one that said I'd surprised him with honesty, that I'd let him in past my usual defenses. You're getting better at the vulnerability thing. I have a good teacher. I squeezed his hand, though I did have a minor panic attack before I left my apartment. Convinced this was all a terrible mistake and I was going to ruin the best friendship of my life. What changed your mind? Rachel texted. She said, stop spiraling and go kiss your boyfriend already. Which, fair point. Also, the phrase your boyfriend in reference to, you made me feel? Really good, yeah. Marcus's smile was soft, hopeful. Yeah, we did kiss that night, standing outside my apartment building with the Seattle skyline glittering behind us. It was our first kiss, technically, though I'd imagined it so many times in the past week that the reality felt both familiar and entirely new. Marcus's hand cupped my jaw gently, his thumb brushing my cheekbone, and when his lips met mine, it felt like every romantic cliché I'd ever rolled my eyes, at fireworks and electricity and coming home all at once. Wow, I breathed when we broke apart. Yeah, Marcus agreed, his forehead resting against mine. We should have done that about 4 years ago. We weren't ready 4 years ago. I wasn't ready, and now I'm terrified and excited and so completely in love with you that I don't know what to do with the feeling. Marcus kissed me again. Softer this time, a gentle confirmation that I didn't have to know what to do with it. We'd figure it out together. Coming out as a couple to our friends was easier and harder than I'd expected. Easier because, as Rachel had predicted, absolutely no one was surprised. Harder because their reactions made me realize how obvious our feelings had been to everyone except us. We told our friend group over brunch at our usual Sunday spot, the restaurant where we'd been gathering for years. I'd been nervous all morning, but Marcus's hand on my knee under the table grounded me. So Marcus started, glancing at me for confirmation before continuing. Adrian and I have some news. We're together. Like romantically together. Dating. There was a beat of silence. And then our friend Jamie started laughing. Oh, thank God. I thought you were going to tell us you were moving to separate cities or something actually upsetting. You're not surprised? I asked. Adrian, we've been running a betting pool on when you two would finally get your act together, said Emma, our friend who'd introduced us to the restaurant in the first place. I just won $50, by the way. I had October in the pool. You've been betting on us? Marcus sounded amused rather than offended. For like 2 years, Jamie confirmed. You two have been painfully obvious about being in love with each other. We were just waiting for you to catch up. The conversation devolved into good-natured teasing and questions about how it happened, and I felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't realized was tight. Our relationship wasn't a disruption to the group dynamic, it was a natural evolution of what had always been there. Later, walking back to Marcus's apartment hand in hand through the autumn streets, I felt more settled than I had in years. This was real. This was happening. And the world hadn't ended. It had actually gotten significantly better. The following weeks were a study in integration, learning how to be partners while maintaining. It's the friendship that had been our foundation. We navigated small discoveries and adjustments, the way Marcus liked to be held while falling asleep, my need for quiet time in the mornings, how to balance our separate lives with this new shared one. Some things didn't change at all. We still had our Sunday morning coffee runs, still texted throughout the day about random thoughts and interesting architecture and funny things we'd seen. We still knew each other's schedules and favorite foods and the exact right words for difficult moments. But new layers added richness to what we'd built. Coming home to find Marcus cooking dinner in my kitchen, singing off-key to whatever playlist he'd queued up, waking up with his arm around my waist, his breath warm against my shoulder. The intimate vocabulary of a romantic relationship, the pet names in private, jokes and physical affection that felt both revolutionary and completely natural. We had our first fight 3 weeks in, a stupid argument about whether to attend my firm's holiday party together or separately. I'd suggested separately, out of habit, that old instinct to keep my professional and personal lives in different boxes. Marcus had been hurt reading it as shame about our relationship. "Not ashamed of you," I said, frustrated that I'd communicated so poorly. "I'm protective of you, of us. Work feels like this space where I have to perform a certain version of myself, and I didn't want to subject you to that." "But I've been to your work events before," Marcus pointed out. "Multiple times as your friend? How is this different?" "Because now it feels like I'm sharing something precious. I don't trust those people to treat it with the care it deserves." Understanding shifted Marcus's expression. "Aid, I appreciate that you want to protect what we have. But hiding it isn't protection. It's just another way of keeping walls up. I want to be part of your whole life, not just the parts that feel safe." He was right. Of course he was right. We went to the party together. While there were a few awkward moments and one passive-aggressive comment from a colleague who'd always been slightly homophobic, mostly it was fine. Better than fine, having Marcus there made the evening bearable, even enjoyable. And the pride I felt introducing him as my partner was worth any discomfort. We learned each other in new ways. Marcus's anxiety spiked around deadlines. He needed reassurance that his work was good, that he was talented, that he wasn't about to fail spectacularly. I learned to recognize the signs, the excessive double-checking, the self-deprecating comments, and counter them with specific, genuine praise. I, in turn, had a tendency to shut down when stressed, retreating into work as a defense mechanism. Marcus learned to gently pull me back, reminding me to eat and sleep, and that the world wouldn't end if I took a break. He learned when to push and when to give me space. That delicate balance that only someone who truly knew me could navigate by the time spring arrived. We'd settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable, healthy, real. 6 months together, but really years in the making. We were at my apartment. Marcus had kept his place, but we spent most nights together, moving between spaces as our schedules demanded. When he brought up the conversation, I'd been simultaneously anticipating and dreading. "I've been thinking about the future," Marcus said, setting down his sketchbook. We were on my couch, his feet in my lap, while I reviewed building plans on my laptop, about us, specifically. My heart rate picked up. "Okay, what about us? I want to move in together. Officially. Not just spending nights at each other's places, but actually combining our lives. What do you think?" I thought about how right it felt having Marcus's toothbrush next to mine, his books on my shelves, his presence in my space. I thought about how much I loved falling asleep next to him and waking up to his sleep-rumpled hair and terrible morning breath. I thought about building a home together, not just occupying separate spaces. "I think yes," I said. "I think I'd really love that." Marcus's smile could have powered the entire city. Yeah. Though we should probably look for a new place. Somewhere that's ours together, not yours or mine." "I like that idea." Marcus shifted, moving to straddle my lap, his hands framing my face. "I like everything about our future, Adrian Cole. Every single possibility." I kissed him, deep and slow, pouring every ounce of love and certainty and gratitude into the connection. When we broke apart, I rested my forehead against his, breathing him in. "I never expected this," I admitted. "Never thought I'd be the kind of person who could have something this good, this healthy, this real." "You deserve it," Marcus said firmly. "You deserve all the love and happiness in the world, and I'm going to spend every day making sure you know that." "I love you," I said, the words coming easier now, no longer terrifying, but natural, essential. "I'm so in love with you it sometimes scares me how much." "Good," Marcus said, kissing me again. "Because I'm never letting you go." The apartment we found was in Ballard. A light-filled corner unit with space for Marcus's design studio and a balcony, where we could watch the sunset over the water. Moving in together was chaotic and wonderful, arguing about furniture placement. Discovering we both had the same copy of 3 different books, creating rituals and rhythms in our shared space. Rachel visited the week after we'd fully unpacked, taking in the evidence of our combined lives with obvious satisfaction. "I told you," she said, accepting the coffee Marcus made her exactly how she liked it. "I told you this could be extraordinary." "You were right," I admitted. About everything. I'm always right, Rachel said. But she was smiling. So when are you going to propose? Because I already have my maid of honor speech written. Hi, Rachel. I protested, even as Marcus laughed. What? You're telling me you haven't thought about it? I had actually thought about a future so intertwined with Marcus's that I couldn't imagine anything else. Thought about legal recognition of what we'd built, public declaration of private truth. Thought about ceremony and commitment and forever. But that was a conversation for another day. For now, I was content with this Sunday morning in our apartment. Marcus making breakfast while I read the news. Rachel teasing us about our future, the city waking up beyond our windows. For now, it was enough to have found my home and a person, to have been brave enough to see what was in front of me all along. To have said yes to love even when it terrified me. What happened with my best friend surprised me. It surprised me by being the easiest thing I'd ever done and the hardest. By being both entirely expected and completely revolutionary. By proving that the best love stories don't always start with fireworks sometimes. They start with friendship and grow into something that changes your entire world. Marcus looked up from the stove, caught me watching him, and smiled that smile that still made my heart race, even after a year together. What are you thinking about? He asked. How lucky I am, I said honestly. How grateful I am that I finally figured it out. We figured it out together, Marcus corrected. Always generous, always team-oriented. That's how we work best. It was right. We'd figured it out together. And we'd continue figuring it out together, the challenges and joys. The mundane moments and extraordinary ones, all of it. This was my life now, our life. And it was more beautiful than anything I could have designed on my own.